You're watching Co-op for Two, broadcasting live from Champaign, Illinois, October 7th, 2022, Thursday night around 11 p.m. And today we are playing turn 13 of our play-by-mail, murders by mail game, Sherlock Holmes Fellowship of Bones. I have the reply here. A couple of bookkeeping items we should talk about first before we start playing. We're now a couple weeks behind in our LA Noire play-by-mail case. That's because our last reply got delayed. I'm going to tell you the story about that in the email exchange with the murders by mail folks. But UPS looked like they said that the letter had come today, so I scheduled it for today at 1 a.m., but it hasn't arrived in the mail. Hopefully the mail hasn't gotten lost, and we'll get it in the next couple of days. But we'll only be playing the Sherlock Holmes case today. If the LA case arrives, we'll play it on Saturday night, because tomorrow we have a longer game scheduled, the Cold Case Investigation Unit case number 4, called Mission Possible. I'm really looking forward to that. That'll be the 4th and the final game of that series. Afterwards, I'll do a review. Okay. Any other bookkeeping, catching up with the chat we need to do? I just saw Amsterdam, the movie Amsterdam, with Christian Bale and a whole bunch of other people, and I did not like it. I thought it was self-indulgent, just filmed oddly, and didn't quite didn't quite match the emotional tone I think they were going for. Matt and Jonathan have been watching some. Jonathan's been playing some games, it looks like. Computer games. Okay, so maybe I was thinking to make up for being behind on the LA Noire, maybe we should consider opening the black envelope for this game today that we think has the questions we're supposed to answer. We think we pretty much understand this case. We haven't gone everywhere that we could go, but we've probably gone to enough to understand how to solve the case. If you'll remember, in our last turn, we found finally the mother and brother of our victim, whose real last name is Egerton. So in our last reply, the mother told us that the brother got him into trouble, and the brother was in Millbank. And the mother told us about his girlfriend, who she really wanted him to marry, but wanted him to be rich, and that was partly why he was coming up with all his scams. But it sounded like he was actually a nice guy. He was giving money to the mother and brother. Then we talked to the brother himself. We didn't have to go to Millbank. He had an apartment. He basically said, why would I kill my brother? He's the goose that laid the golden egg. He was giving me money. He just seemed like a con artist, but not someone who would kill his brother. And then we went to the Princess Theater to talk to the girlfriend. And she wasn't there, but we got her address, and that's one of the places we went on our last turn. We're hoping to speak to the girlfriend, maybe get a little more insight into our victim. Jonathan says, saw trailers for Amsterdam, didn't know what to make of it. Maybe not a priority. Yeah, the trailers looked quite good to me, but the actual movie, not so much. All right, let's open up this letter, remind ourselves where else we went, and see if we're ready to look at the final answers. I sort of changed this. Let's see. No, it's the right size. Okay, so where did we go? We sent Watson to another room in the Burlington House. There are a couple of rooms there that we know our victim was in, and we want to clear that up. Even with this one, there's one or two others we haven't visited. We sent Wiggins, who we know in the Sherlock Holmes ward went on to become an actor, so we went to send him to the actress's home, where she's living with some other actresses. Rebecca says Rebecca Minnick, my friend who I went to see the movie with, said Amsterdam was great. Don't listen to Jesse. Okay, and then we sent Miss Hudson to Somerset House. What's Somerset House? Somerset House is one of our informants, there are quite a few that we haven't been to yet. Somerset House is archives of births, deaths, and marriages. I forget who we were hoping to... Oh, I know what we were hoping to do. We know our main suspect went and visited his mother. At least that's what he says. So we were thinking maybe we might get a lead on him. I think we're probably not meant to find him, but we thought maybe if there's any chance of finding him, that might be the way. Okay, so let's see what Watson found at Burlington. The sitting room at the Royal Society is a cross between a library and a gentleman's club's smoking room. Bookshelves line the walls, and small tables flanked by leather armchairs fill the center of the room. The butler in charge of serving the room's denizens, one Mr. Monroe, was quite helpful in answering my questions. I focused mainly on the three men who'd been known to argue with Mr. Edwards. I've already heard about Mr. Edwards' altercation with Mr. Stewart. Around what time did this occur, we ask. Around 4:45, sir. And did they both leave immediately? Oh, more or less. I think Mr. Stewart lingered for a few minutes after Mr. Edwards said he was going to inspect his specimens. And when did you next see Mr. Stewart? I asked. Not until after the police had been summoned, sir. That's the printer in the background doing its little cleaning. I normally try to turn that off, but I've forgotten. Okay. So we're asking, when did Mr. Stewart, this is our prime suspect, Mr. Stewart, I believe. When did you next see Mr. Stewart? Not until after the police had been summoned, sir. And was Sir John Young present in the sitting room that afternoon? Yes, sir. He had a game of chess with Mr. Berrycloth. And was Sir Young ever absent? This is another one of our suspects, Sir Young. Mr. Monroe wiped a hand across his brow. I couldn't say, sir. The room was quite crowded, and I had no reason to be paying attention to people's movements. What about Martin Cavendish? Was he present? Yes, sir. I don't recall when he arrived, but he made an ostentatious exit around 5:40. Made some needlessly loud and rather unkind remarks about Darwinists and eternal perdition before he left. And did he return? I don't recall seeing him again that night. And did you see anyone acting suspiciously? No, sir. As I said, we had dozens of members in the room, and my staff and I had all we could manage to simply keep everyone's drinks freshened. But we have been keeping an extra eye out since those thefts have he paused abruptly and put his hand over his mouth. Thefts? What thefts? We ask. I wasn't meant to mention those. There have been a few thefts of personal items in recent weeks. I've no idea if they're related to the murder or not, and that's already more than I should have said. We've already sorted that out. We know that's John Young. He's the opium addict who's been stealing stuff, not related to the murder. We say, well, I've no reason yet to believe they're related to the murder, but it may bear further investigation. I'll inform Mr. Holmes and see what he thinks on the matter. Is there anything else you can think of that I should know? No, sir. I'm sorry not to be of more help, sir. Nonsense. You've been most helpful. I appreciate your talking with me. Of course, sir. All right, so nothing really. Little bit timeline information. All right, so let's look at what he says about Stewart, since this is our main suspect, right? Charles Stewart, the guy who had the lawsuit with him. They had an altercation. He lingered for a few minutes after Mr. Edwards said he was going to inspect his specimens. Then what time did you next see him? Not until after the police had been summoned. Am I wrong? Is Stewart not our guy? Who's our suspect? Maybe it's not Charles Stewart. It was someone else. Davidson. Richard Davidson is our prime suspect. Charles Stewart is just someone who got into a fight with him, who we don't think is involved. Okay. All right, here's the one we've been waiting for, which is Wiggins talking to the actress. This will put some little humanity into our victim. Given the neighborhood I came up in, I'm not the sort to judge how folk live, but even I was a bit surprised at Angela Sedgwick's flat. It was a big open attic inhabited by at least a dozen people, men and women. There were no doors except around the water closet, with only blankets hung from ropes to separate sleeping spots. When I arrived, 2 young men were practicing fencing in the center of the room, while a third loudly recited poetry while facing a corner. Angela Sedgwick herself is a lovely woman, willowy and with hair so blonde it's almost white. After I'd introduced myself, she sat me down at a table and made us a cup of tea. She then poured a hearty shot of bourbon into her own cup. I nodded at my own cup, and she gave me a pour too. Yes, I know Warren Edwards, she said, drinking deeply. He was so exciting at first, a real explorer, you know, the kind of daring soul out there living the kinds of adventures I only pretend at on stage. He was fun and very kind. Well, at first. Only at first, she sighed. What you have to understand is that Warren's personality was tied to his fortunes. When he was flush with cash and the esteem of his peers, he was as jolly as Father Christmas, doting and gregarious and everyone's friend, which was how he was before he went to America, and for several months after. But then he ran out of money, and he got peevish and mean. He saw suspicion and malice in everyone, which was only confirmed with that bloody lawsuit. Oh no, a lawsuit? What was that about? I never learned the details of it. Something about fraud and a diamond mine. Warren could fly into a rage at the merest mention of it, so I soon learned to steer clear of the subject. He lost his temper quite often near the end. It wasn't just that being around him wasn't fun anymore. It eventually grew scary even. Well, dangerous. Don't tell me that rotter hit you. Oh, once. And he paid for that once. I stabbed him in the thigh with a letter opener. That's the last time I allowed myself to be alone with him. I asked Tony, our stage manager, to keep him at bay, but Warren kept coming around. He only got more obsessed as time went on. In the end, it was almost sad. Now, when did you last see him? 2 weeks ago or so. He was drunk as a lord, shouting at me while the boys held him off. He said something he shouldn't have, and Tony bloodied his nose and threw him out. I hope it won't cause hard feelings, but I got to ask. Mr. Holmes will have me Ed if I don't. Where were you on the afternoon of the 4th? She laughed and touched the back of my hand. Oh, it's almost sweet of you to think I killed him. Sometimes I wished I'd had the nerve when I had that letter opener in hand. But no, it was not me. I was here running lines before opening night, and I have half a dozen friends who'll swear they were here with me. All right, so it's her alibi. She fleshes out our victim a little bit. says that in the end, when he was desperate for money, he was getting angry and violent, and he did not like to talk about the lawsuit, which is what our suspect no doubt wanted to confront him about. Okay, let's see what Miss Hudson got at the informant at Somerset House. Somerset House is an enormous building with clerks and government officials streaming through the doors and clogging the hallways. I must admit I wandered, lost for the better part of an hour before I found the registry of births, marriages, and deaths. There I found a semblance of quiet and calm and the reassuring presence of David Ambrose. A somber young man with curly black hair, he welcomed me with a nod. I introduced myself, and he sat silently but attentively while I explained what I was looking for. Without a word, he vanished into the rows of cabinets and shelves. It was quite some time before he returned. An interesting problem you've brought me, ma'am, he said when he returned with a sheaf of papers. There is no birth record for Warren Edwards within London. At first I thought he had been born elsewhere. Then I found this. He placed an ornate document on top of the pile of papers. It's a deed of change. Warren Edwards changed his name. He was born Warren Egerton. So this was a second way we could find out his real name and his relations. We already found this information, though. It's rather unusual. Most name changes are part of noble wills to ensure the bloodline continues. Why, I remember when one Marquess died, his will stipulated that, well, I digress. What's more unusual in this instance is that the deed of change was actually revoked only a month later. There's a brief note attached about him being transported to Australia. Most judges won't approve a name change for felons. Does it say why he was sent to Australia? No, just that he was, and from what you say, it appears he continued calling himself Edwards regardless. Once I found his real name, I was able to dig up some further records. Let's see. Warren Edwards, also known as Warren Egerton, was born April 3rd, 1857. He has an elder brother named Russell Egerton, who was born December 12th, 1852. We visited Russell. Parents are Mary and Charles Egerton, married June of 1852. In May of 1860, Mary Egerton attempted to file for divorce on grounds of desertion. She was able to pay the court fees, so the case was dropped, and I'm afraid that's all I found. So, no word on where the father is now, then? I asked. None whatever. But remember, these are only birth, marriage, and death records, and only for London. He may have died elsewhere or be living happily in a different part of town than his estranged wife. I'd have no way of determining that. For that matter, I have no idea if Russell or Mary still live here either. They do, we visited them. Only that they haven't died here. Well, I appreciate your time. This has been most interesting. It was my pleasure, ma'am. Please extend my best wishes to Mr. Holmes for a full and speedy recovery. If you want that full and speedy recovery, Sherlock, you'll be well-minded to eat the broth I make for you. If I find another bowl gone cold without so much as a spoonful eaten, we'll see how well you do fending for yourself. All right. Clarification, says Jonathan. Did we ever find evidence that the fossils our victim brought back were fake? Or was he a legitimate paleontologist who just brought others into the shady diamond mines? We don't know. We did not find confirmation that his skeleton bones were fake. And in fact, when we talked to his mentor seemed to think he was a good scientist, even though he was conducting these scams. So this guy is mentioning his father, Charles Egerton, but we know he's not in the directory. He says he knows nothing about him. I don't think the mother gave us any information on him that we could find. What did the mother say? Mother says he's a good boy. Blames the brother for turning him to crime. Doesn't really say much about her ex-husband. We have no reason to think that ex-husband's involved in anything bad. So, I'm not sure we have too much more else to do or go to. We could go to the British Museum Library. We haven't been there yet. We've been to Somerset now. We should have marked that. Let's see. What color is Hudson? Is Hudson our yellow? Yes, so we should have marked that Hudson went to Somerset House. So the only informants left are two newspapers, the British Museum, Lawyer, Criminal Cases, Porky Shinwell, the London Underworld guy, who's often very helpful, but we're not too sure he's going to be helpful in this case. And then Mycroft Holmes, whose specialty doesn't seem to be related to this case. Let's look at our Burlington House where we haven't gone. So we haven't gone to the main Burlington House location in case we wanted to. We also haven't been to the president's office, which is right next to the door where we think they escape, where the killer escaped out of. So I really think we need to go visit that place soon before we finish. And then there's also the antiquities president we haven't been to, although that's on the other side of the place. I mean, if we're looking for witness, B1 is a really good place to go to see if he saw our suspect downstairs. And then, you know, maybe the geological president could answer Jonathan's question about whether the bones they brought back were real or fake. If there was anything more we'd like to know, it would be something on the order of, did anyone else see our main suspect downstairs beyond when he said he was going to be there? We would love to be able to track down our main suspect after he left his flat in northeast London here. I mean, you could imagine that if he went off to visit his relative, we could catch him at the train station near his house. I wonder if we shouldn't read that again. I mean, our gut probably tells us that we don't need to find him, or that we're not going to be able to find him. But maybe we need to read that again. So here's the Richard Davidson. This is our prime suspect. That's why it's worth lingering on this. Richard Davidson lives in Whitechapel, just off the commercial road. Given the number of beggars and street urchins, it reminded me of the streets where I grew up. but felt like an odd place for a fellow of the Royal Society to live. I knocked on the door of his flat for several minutes without any answer. Just as I was about to leave, the door of the flat next door opened, and a woman of about 50 came out. "If you're looking for Mr. Davidson, I haven't seen him for a few days now. Sometimes he goes into the country to visit his mother." I introduced myself and explained that I was working for you. She invited me in for tea. Her flat was a single room with a bed in one corner and a rudimentary kitchen in the other. The only walls within were around a closet-sized water closet. The place was filled with piles and piles of laundry and crisscrossed with clotheslines holding yet more laundry. In the center of the room was a wash basin with a washboard and a hand-cranked wringer. The air was humid and smelled of harsh lye soap. "When was the last time you saw Mr. Davidson?" I asked. What was that day it rained so hard?" "The 4th, I think, the day of the murder." "That's the one. I do his washing for him, and he gave me a suit and a pair of shoes to look after. They were a right mess, with red spots all down the trousers. And on the shoes he said he'd been doing an experiment and spilled iodine all over himself. I've tried my best, but I can't get all the stains out." "Does he have this kind of stain often, then?" "Oh, yes. He's always messing around with some chemical or another. Once he gave me a shirt that he'd spilled acid on that near to fell apart in the washtub." "And do you know him well?" I asked. "Not really. Just the usual pleasantries when he picks up his laundry. He's a quiet man, never makes a fuss. But he seems to be under tension, like a watch that's been overwound, if you get my meaning. I get the impression he used to have more money than he does now, and his pride hasn't ever recovered." We talked for near 20 minutes, and she reminded me so much of me mum that I would gladly have talked to her for an hour more. But there was nothing that came up that seemed to be of interest for our case, so I thanked her for the tea and was on my way. Okay, so nothing new jumps out. Probably bloodstained clothes. He's probably gone off into the country to hide out with his mother, and we're never gonna find them. We're never gonna find him in the course of our business. Even if we saw him if the train station remembered him leaving, how does that help us? It doesn't really. All right. Jonathan says, "I think it's time to open the letter." Matt says, "Yeah, it's time to open the letter." Okay, I'm going to agree with you. It's not the letter. It's well, we don't know what it is. So let's open it. I still would like to visit the president's room to see if he saw anything. But opening the letter doesn't preclude that. Opening the letter we think is going to tell us what questions to answer when we want to go online and answer them. It doesn't mean we have to do that now. So we are now going to open this black envelope. This is quite exciting. We've been playing this for 12 weeks now, more than 12 weeks. And we're finally going to see what is inside this envelope. Open only when ready to solve. All right, before we open it, let's remind ourselves how the game tells us to play. We take our turns. Always remember the killer is actively trying to thwart your investigation. Your choices can affect outcomes for characters surrounding the case with legal, romantic, or even moral consequence. We've seen no evidence of any of that. Okay, when you're ready to solve, refer to the mysterious sealed envelope in the back of the case file. It contains the questions you must answer correctly to complete the case. The accuracy of your answers will determine your final score, and then we go to the website and tell it we want to solve it. So opening this doesn't necessarily force us to solve it now, but it may give away information that we don't want to know until we're ready to solve it. Are you sure you've got nowhere else you want to go? Are you sure you want to read this before we visit the president's office and see if he saw anything? I guess everyone is ready. Okay, doesn't mean we're going to try to solve it now. We could still go to the president's office. But I think it's not going to change it dramatically. Okay, here we go. All right, so it's a card. And here we go. The Fellowship of Bones. Your answer to these questions will determine if you have untangled the plot and unmasked the killer. Incorrect answers will damage your final score and impact the characters in the case, with legal, romantic, or even mortal consequences. These primary questions deal with the most important aspects of the case: murder, motive, method, etc. Okay. Who killed Warren Edwards? Why was he killed? And what crime had Edwards committed? The secondary questions involve side plots and details which you may or may not have uncovered. These are not required to solve the case, but correct answers will provide additional points. Why did Edwards first go to Australia? What were the nature of Edwards' youthful misdeeds? What is Mr. Lawson's secret? To complete the case, visit Murders by Mail. Okay. So let's start with the question 6. What is Mr. Lawson's secret? Okay, so John Lawson is the guy who hired us, and his secret is he is the thief that's been stealing from the gentleman's club, and he's the opium addict. All right. Now, what were the nature of Edward's youthful misdeeds? Well, his mother, the last place we went to, was talking to us about them. What did she tell us? She says they get into trouble when they were small. The older one was always into trouble. I blame him for corrupting my poor sweet Warren. She said it was Russell that got him into running cons. And then we know he got sent to Australia as a youth. For doing that. Do we need to be more specific about what cons he was running? What does the brother say? We say we know he got sent to Australia. Yes, when I was a young lad, I took it into my head to steal a hansom cab. I fell off the driver's seat, broke his leg, and Warren came back a changed man. So I guess he got pinched for trying to steal this hansom cab. Confidence games and cons. Okay. A con is a confidence game. Okay. So we know this. We know this. Why did Edwards first go to Australia? We know that. We know he was arrested and sent to Australia. Only reason the brother didn't get sent there is because the brother had a broken leg. Okay. Who killed Warren Edwards? Well, our answer is going to be Davidson, right? The guy who got suckered out of his money that got lost in the mines, won the lawsuit, but only won $100. Now, we've got a little bit of trouble here. with 2 and 3. Why was he killed and what crime had he committed? This very much gets back to Jonathan's question about whether the fossils were real or not. I guess what we think is he was killed. Why was he killed? We think the answer is revenge for causing Richard Davidson to lose all his money. And then what crime had he committed? Are we saying that his crime was the diamond mine scam? So that sounds like that's what Jonathan is saying. He was killed for revenge by the guy who sued him and lost all his money. And the crime he had committed was fraudulent diamond mine stuff. And Jonathan says, I'm not sure it was the actual cab that Warren got taken to Australia with. Okay, so just running the confidence games. It's a little bit troubling because we would like more confirmation that the diamond mine was actually a scam. I'm not sure we got 100% confirmation on that. It's a good guess. We're pretty sure that our guy Richard Davidson confronted him and they got into a fight. But is it not possible that he confronted him and got into a fight and then killed him? Well, we don't have confirmation that those diamond mines were scams, do we? Sounds like Jonathan is a little bit concerned as I am, because Jonathan is saying maybe we should check another informant before we try to answer this. It's really these two that are troubling us. Why was he killed and what crime has he committed? Because we don't know exactly the circumstances of the murder, of the killing. It's possible they just got into a fight. It's a little confusing. And the guy who we think killed him didn't have money currently invested. And there are also those bones that could be fake. I mean, you could imagine another scenario where our guy confronted him and said, hey, I know the bones are fake. If you don't pay me money that you owe me from the diamond mines, then I'm going to tell everyone. Then that wouldn't be a death due to revenge. It would be a death due to a fight after a blackmail attempt. It's a little tricky. Well, we could go to, if we're not sure about answering that, we could send someone to the president's office to see what they heard. We could send someone to learn about any criminal cases. We could send someone to Porky's to learn about the underworld, maybe that would shed some light on our guy. We could send someone to the museum. We could send someone to Mycroft about government and politics. I guess he would know a little bit about Australia, but that just seems like that's not going to help us much. Criminal cases, sounds like we might uncover the brother's case and more about why he was sent to Australia. I suppose you could argue that going to the criminal cases might give us the details of why he was sent to Australia if we don't know that fully. Where are we told why he went to Australia? I mean, we could just take a risk on these answers, but seems like we've come so far, it would be a shame. What does the brother say why he went to Australia? We say, I know he got sent to Australia. Why didn't you? They ran these confidence games. This guy says, I robbed a store. I robbed the cab. Tried to steal a cab. He may have been a real scientist. I'm sure I can't say, but he never stopped being a confidence man. I guess we did get confirmation from the brother that he was running scams. All those expeditions he took all over the world, he took in investments from his high and mighty new friends. Not a one of those investments ever paid out. Diamond mines, dinosaur bones, it were all just bait on the hook. So the brother does seem to confirm that he's running these scams, but he says he wouldn't kill him. That's the goose that laid the golden egg. I know that Warren was transported to Australia for fraud. Transported to Australia for fraud. All right, so I think we know why he was go to Australia for fraud. Okay, let's see. Blake says he bilked the guy out of his life savings, didn't he? And now the murderer is living in lower class housing than he was before. Yes, for sure. John says, I'm 90% confident it was revenge and fraudulent mining ventures. Okay, I think we've now confirmed that, yes, they were fraudulent mining ventures. I think from the brother, we now know that they were scams. They were investment scams. So I think now we know everything, and then I guess we think that he was killed for revenge. I guess we can say he was killed for revenge, not for money, because we know Warren Edwards ran out of money at this point. So he had no money. Maybe our guy confronted him and was like, pay me the money you owe. And Warren Edwards is like, I got no money. I got nothing. The bones are fake. You're getting nothing from me. And they got into a fight and he was angry and then he killed him. Look what it says down here. It says, not ready after all. One more thing to check. Go on, keep investigating. We won't tell. So as we predicted, once you read this, you could still keep going. I wouldn't mind doing one more final move. Sending someone to the president's office who might have overheard something. Sending someone to the criminal cases to see if we can find a current criminal case on our guy. And then maybe one more place. Um, trying to think. I mean, I don't think we need it, but I don't think it would hurt. And we'll draw out the suspense. All right, we're going to take one more turn. So we are going to send, on our final turn, we're going to send someone to the Burlington House President's office, which is right near the exit. So we'll send Watson there. Watson's been going to Burlington House. That makes sense. The President's office. Okay. 2 more places to go. Two more places to go. I think maybe if I had to pick one of the places, it might be the lawyer who keeps tabs on current criminal cases to maybe see if we can't catch We're told that Richard Davidson almost got arrested for violence after the court case against our guy, and maybe we'll learn that they've got a case against Warren Edwards or against Richard Davidson. What do you think? Blake says, I'm just afraid he's running through the countryside on a murder spree, hitting people with fossils. It's time to bring the hammer of justice down. If we were wrong about him, but who else would be down there? Yeah, I think we're going to stretch it out one more turn, and then we'll do that. But okay, what about the Old Bailey criminal cases? Anyone have any place else they'd like to go instead of that? There's chemists. That's not going to help us. Civil cases. Okay, I'm going to send Hudson to the Old Bailey criminal cases, EC12. Okay, last place. Porky's with Wiggins and confirm the confidence games. All right, let's go to Porky's. He's usually pretty good. He's usually got some information. He's an interesting character anyway. Okay, so there we go. We're taking one more turn. We're going to beat a dead horse and just do our due diligence. Let's get our moves in. Okay, so Watson's going to the president's office, right near where the person escaped from Burlington House. Wiggins is going to Porky Shinwell, who knows about the criminal underworld. And Miss Hudson is going to learn about some active cases, if there are any active cases, And here we go, sending the move. And that's it. Okay, that'll be our last letter. We will read it, and unless we get any shocking information, we will be solving it next week when we get our final letter. All right, anything else anyone wants to talk about before we finish? I really hope the LA Noir case reply comes tomorrow so we can play it on Saturday. If not, we'll have to put in an emergency request for another one. Jonathan says it would have been unlucky to solve it on turn 13. It seems more appropriate that we stretch out the suspense. We've opened up the envelope on this turn, and next turn we'll actually act on it. Okay, I will see you all tomorrow for a longer session where we play Cold Case Investigation Unit Case 4, Mission Possible. I'm very curious if it can live up to the previous 3 cases or even come close. I'll sign off here. I'll see you all, or some of you, tomorrow. Thanks for joining me.